Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Match Grade podcast. I'm Matt, and we're here tonight with a much requested episode about traveling with your firearms. I got Ed here with me. We're going to get into this topic. Again, a lot of people asking for it, so let's jump right in.
Quick disclaimer, Matt. So we are not attorneys and we're not offering legal advice for any of these. So be sure to check your federal, state, and county regulations when you are traveling. But these are some great, helpful hints and tips that we've kind of picked up and learned, over the many years for some of us that have been doing this. So let's get into it. Why would you travel with a firearm? And let's say you're traveling like out of state, somewhere.
So out of your home state.
hmm
Okay. Why would you do that? Well, why would you carry it home? That's going to be my answer, right?
hmm
Any reason you might want to carry it home would be a reason why you would travel and carry when you go someplace else.
Right.
But in specifics, right? Let's think about other things we might be doing. We might be going to a competition in another state. So
Right.
we definitely want to take our firearms competition. We want to go take some training. So going to bring your gun. You might be going out camping. You might be out west where you're in the middle of nowhere and you want to have some protection with you against animals or two-legged predators. So there's a lot of reasons. Or you're going to some state where maybe the crime rate is much higher than where you live and you want to have your concealed carry firearm with you. Again, basically any reason you might carry it home, it's a good reason to have your gun with you when you travel.
So primarily it seems like personal protection
Yeah.
and recreation. And I throw training in with, recreation and
We'll
competition.
throw it in there.
So,
Sure.
okay.
Yeah.
And I know the major consideration that people are going to be thinking about first before they're traveling is, can you drive there versus can you fly there? So different things to think about, maybe?
So I think, well, let's just throw it right out there. You can fly with a firearm. I get that question all the time. A lot of people are on the assumption you can't fly with firearms.
Wait, even if I'm not like an air marshal, I can fly with my firearm?
You can take it with you.
Okay.
Okay. You cannot take it in your bag that you're going to go through security and carry it on the plane.
So not in my carry-on.
Not in your carry-on bag,
Okay.
but you can take it with you in your check bag.
Okay.
So yes, you can fly with your firearm. You can also drive with your firearm, and some people may not realize that you can do that. I think it's more recognized, but some people say, "Well, I'm not legal in X state, so I can't drive." That's not true. That's
Okay.
not necessarily true. So
And I'm sure we'll get into the specific minutia of, states and travel and things like that. But would you
yes.
say it's easier to drive somewhere with your firearm rather than flying somewhere?
Yes, short answer, yes. Long answer, you need to know the rules for flying, and you need to know the rules about where you're traveling to and where you're going through.
Okay.
So, but in general, yes, it's easier because you're going to have the gun with you. It's going to be mostly under your control.
Right.
You don't have to follow like how do I package it necessarily
Okay.
for flight if you're traveling with it. And we can talk about again if you have CCW permits that are recognized. That does open up things, especially
Mhm.
in guns, on how you can transport them when you're driving. So in general, driving is easier than flying with a firearm, but it's not really that hard to fly with a firearm either.
Okay. I think a lot of people are nervous about it because maybe they don't quite know the rules, and
Yes.
heaven forbid, like something goes wrong, like I didn't put it in a TSA approved container or I forgot to do something, does that break laws? Am I going to be fined for that? I genuinely didn't know any better because maybe it's my
Right.
first time.
So those are the pitfalls, right? Those are definitely the pitfalls. And you do need to do your research. And that's where we're going to kind of help point you in the right direction and show you some stuff here tonight about what you can do and what you need to do to allow yourself to legally and policy-wise with some of the airlines be able to fly with your gun. So, yeah. But there are pitfalls you got to avoid for sure.
All right.
Yep.
What about, what was that legal doctrine law, the Safe Passage Act?
Safe passage or safe journey.
Okay.
I've heard it referred to both ways. That's a federal law that's out there for people who are traveling, and it's geared towards automobile travel.
Okay. So no flight.
Not flying necessarily, no, but it does apply a little bit when you're flying as well. But it's geared towards driving.
Okay.
And it's for people to be able to take their firearms with them when they're traveling. And short answer on this, you have to be legal where you start to have the gun,
Where you're leaving from.
where you're leaving from.
Okay.
And then you have to be legal where you're ending up to be covered by the law.
Okay.
So if you're going from here to Florida, you have to be legal to possess your firearm in New York, and then you have to be legal to possess it in Florida, just as an example.
Gotcha.
But it would allow you to take that gun, and I'm not using the word carry, I'm saying take that gun with you through every state on your journey, as long as you adhere to some specific rules.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay. So the state that you start in,
Yep,
and the state that you finish in, and that goes for both handguns and long guns.
and long guns. Yep, it covers both.
Okay.
Correct. Just kind of briefly, the idea of that is if you weren't legal to, say, carry your handgun in a state, but you were traveling through it. Actually, let's back up for a second because there's a little nuance there too.
Okay.
We got to separate carry and possess your handgun. Okay. Carry means have it on you generally concealed. In most states, we're talking about concealed carry versus owning this gun and having it with you. Okay.
Not that specific.
Not this one, but your pistol, your handgun. So many states, you can have a pistol without a permit. It's shocking for people in New York, but you can have a pistol. You can go to a store and buy a handgun without a permit.
That falls under the possess definition that you were just going over.
Correct, exactly.
So you can own it. Okay.
So therefore, like I can go to a state that allows me to do that and have my gun with me, but not have a permit for that state that's recognized or that state specific permit.
Okay.
Okay. So that's the first thing people have to understand. You can have your gun in a lot of states. You might not be allowed to carry it concealed without a permit, but you can still have it.
Got it.
Okay. Then there's going to be other states where you need a permit, or you might just not be allowed to have a handgun, period. There's a few states that fall into that category. Safe Journey would allow you still to travel through those states with your handgun as long as you meet a certain requirement.
So that brings up an interesting question. So I don't know about you, but I can't make the road trip from New York to Florida in one go without stopping to pee, to get gas, maybe to take a nap or do an overnight somewhere.
Correct.
At least I can't. I'm not that young anymore. So where does safe passage, assuming, let's say I'm legal to possess and carry in New York.
Correct. Okay.
And I'm legal to possess and carry in Florida.
Yep.
But there might be some states in between on my road trip that I'm not allowed to. So how do I work through that?
So the classic example of this was South Carolina.
Okay.
They just want constitutional carry. So now you can actually carry and possess there with no permit needed. But it used to be, hey, you had to have a permit to carry there. They didn't issue to non-residents, but you could still possess in South Carolina. Okay. What about a state like Maryland? You got to go through, mostly to go south, you got to go through Maryland.
Yep.
Okay, Maryland, you can't carry there without a permit, and you can't possess there without a permit.
Okay.
Okay. So what do you do?
Drive all the way around Maryland?
You could. That's an option, and I actually have done that. But under the safe passage, if you unload your handgun, okay, keep the ammunition from the gun separate, so it's not in the same container.
Okay.
And you put the handgun or long gun in a case, preferred to be locking.
Okay.
Okay. Doesn't necessarily have to be, but preferred to be locking. It avoids lock questions. And then put that in the farthest part of the vehicle from the driver.
Okay.
You can drive through any state. We'll say that in theory. I'll touch on that in a minute. But any state without stopping legally.
Okay.
Okay.
So basically, I am taking the firearm and the ammunition, keeping it separate, and basically keeping it as far reaches of my car inaccessible for the most part.
Accessible to the driver, right?
Right.
Yep.
And then I can drive through that state.
That's correct.
Okay.
And the key part about that is without stopping. And people will go, oh my gosh, I can't get gas. I can't get food. I can't use the restroom. No, the answer is you can do all three of those things actually legally under safe passage. What you can't do is stay overnight.
Gotcha.
So you can't get a hotel room. You can't sleep in your car. Okay.
Interesting.
Yes, this is better. There actually was a case where that came to the higher courts where someone was at a rest stop sleeping in the vehicle and got prosecuted for violating the laws of that state with a gun.
Yep.
And they made the argument the journey had stopped because they were sleeping.
Gotcha.
So you have to be continually on your journey. But the courts have ruled basically I can get food, I can get gas, I can use the restroom.
Okay.
Or if you have an emergency, if your car breaks down,
Right.
it's unavoidable. Okay. But anything outside of that, no sightseeing, don't go to any tourist destination.
Yep.
Don't go visit friends. And, you have to be basically going through the state.
So pit stops only, guys. No long extended stays or overnights in those states.
Correct. I think it's important to understand too, when we say like the farthest part of the vehicle, people often ask, this is a question I get all the time. What if I have a pickup truck?
Yep.
Like behind the back seat would be a good place for the firearm. You don't have to put it in the bed.
Okay. I was just going to.
Because it's not secure, right?
Yep.
Back of the SUV, obviously trunk would be, in a sedan. So
You made a reasonable attempt to keep it inaccessible to the driver or whoever's firearm it belongs to.
and the locking case helps you make that argument. That's why we say locking case preferred, although the law doesn't actually say that.
Gotcha.
Yep.
All right. Now that we've safely beat Safe Passage Act into the ground
Right.
quite a bit, what about those cases that you were talking about as far as storing ammunition or storing your firearm?
Yeah, so there's several options out there, and they're actually going to be similar to what you would use for air travel.
Okay.
I got a couple things here that I usually use. So one is this locking container. It is just a combo locking box. This one for vehicle travel actually comes with this cable where I can hook this into the box and then hook this into some part of the car to make it harder for it to walk away.
Okay.
Okay. And I use this for air travel too, but it's great in a vehicle. It's nice when I travel by air because if I have a rental car, this gives me a secure spot to put my pistol in a vehicle if I need to for some reason in a rental car too.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're traveling safe journey, you can put your firearm in this, lock it up, put it in the trunk, and you're good to go. So that's one option.
What is this made of?
This is like a really hard polymer with a pretty sturdy lock.
Okay.
Little top tip for me, go with the combination locks because invariably you will lose your key at the worst possible time.
Yep.
Also, it makes it easier if you're traveling with someone and you want to allow them to have access to this.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to have an extra key to give to them.
Right.
This comes up a lot when I'm traveling with my spouse, but also when Dave and I are traveling for training.
Mm-hmm.
It might be, hey, Matt, go grab that pistol out of my truck. And if it's in a combo case, we don't have to worry about trading keys or doing anything like that.
Right.
So it makes life a lot easier. So do the combo locks if you can. So this is one good option.
Okay.
I have a little bit bigger option, and this can get as big as you need. So if you have long guns,
Okay.
you can get a case like this. This is a case that is a hard case. People often, Pelican is kind of like Kleenex. It's kind of the generic name for these types of cases,
Mm-hmm.
but it has places for locks all the way around. It's really rigid and hard to get into. So this is a great travel option for people. And you can get the foam and everything for these, but I like this kind of case. And again, you can get them as big as you need.
Yep.
So if you have a long gun, you can get one for a long gun. Also, you can buy cables and put a cable through like the handle into the car so it can't just walk away.
Gotcha.
So that's another good travel type option.
Now, both of these options that you had here, these are, would they say they're TSA approved and stuff?
These are TSA approved for air travel, both of these. Yes.
Okay.
Correct. And we can talk more about, what you have to do with these
Mm-hmm.
when you are traveling, but those specific cases are TSA approved.
So maybe something worth looking into if you're planning on traveling with your firearm or storing your firearm in your vehicle, look for ones that, at least say or come from a reputable company that says they're TSA approved.
Yep.
And then when in doubt, check the TSA website in order to
The
make
nice thing is they do double duty then.
Right.
They're for auto travel, storage,
Mhm.
plus I can take them flying as well. One other option, or maybe a couple other options for auto travel. If you travel a lot and take more than one gun with you, it might be worthwhile looking at like a locking drawer system or locking cabinet.
Who
for the back of
travels
your
with
vehicle.
just one gun?
I agree. Right. Exactly. Hence why, I have drawers in all my vehicles that lock. As a trainer, it actually works out really well
Okay.
because I can store both long guns, handguns, ammunition, all locked up and somewhat out of sight too. The second thing I was going to mention is the console vault. Now, console vault, I would be a little careful of if you're traveling through a state where you're not legally allowed to have the gun.
Yep.
Because it's not away from the driver, even though it's locked. But for every other instance that you can come into traveling with a gun, the console vault's a great option. So,
One other downside, not to knock on the console vaults too much,
Yep.
but every time you're putting it in and out of the console vault, people might be like, well, what are you doing? Or, if they just happened, to be looking into, the cab of your truck or something like that, and you open that middle container, something comes off your hip, something comes out, and something goes in ever so briefly,
someone may pick up on that.
Right.
Yep.
Exactly. It's not as if, you have a case that's going into, well, some console vaults are big enough.
Some are big enough.
But,
right.
Usually you're just putting the gun into the console vault, not the entire carrying case itself.
Right. So it can be seen. Yeah, for sure. Same thing has to be thought about with doing a case like this that you're going to put in the trunk, though. Where do you do that? If you pull over somewhere, say you're in a state where you're legal, and then you're going to a state where you're not legal, but you're going to travel through.
Right.
I need to get that gun off my body and unloaded and locked up. Where do you do that? Right. Where it's kind of private. So you got to plan those things out a little bit. So.
Gotcha. Now, those cases, good for guns, good for storage.
Yep.
What about traveling with ammunition? I know we talked about having to keep it separate, but
yeah.
Are there additional rules for that?
Yeah. So for driving, this is where driving is a lot simpler. Basically, no. It's separate. It doesn't really say how it needs to be separated or what it needs to be stored in. So, you keep it in the magazines and keep the magazines separate. That's one option. Keep it in boxes or ammo cans or whatever, and just make sure it's not with the gun. It can be next to the gun in a separate box. Just don't put in the same box.
So 1 box for the gun,
Yeah.
1 box for the ammo, or
Sure.
a can for ammo, or something like that.
Yep.
Just separate.
Flying's a little different.
Okay.
Flying specifically says that ammunition must be kept in containers designed for the transport of ammunition.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? That's a good question. Well, so the thing is, there's no definition.
Okay.
So what my default is, this box was designed to transport this ammunition from the factory, right?
Oh, so the factory,
So factory boxes is what I use. And another little top tip with that, you don't want to have a stray round end up in your carry-on bag.
Yep.
So by using factory boxes, when I unload to go home, I can put them in here and I know I should have 50 rounds.
Yep.
And if one is missing, I'm on a hunt and I'm looking through everything till I find it. I would not know how to do that for sure if I didn't use factory boxes.
So like a loose ammo can that just has dozens or hundreds.
Do I? I mean, I could count them, but if I miscount by one and that round's in my backpack and I'm taking that as my carry-on,
Yep.
that becomes a problem. This gives me confidence that I've got all the rounds that I came with.
Okay.
And none are loose somewhere where they shouldn't be.
Mhm.
The other thing I do with these boxes, because I've had this happen, this can just go into your checked baggage. It doesn't have to go in a special case.
Okay.
And actually, it should not be in the case with your gun
Yep.
in general, unless you're using a big case like this one, then everything's in together. But if you're using a case like this, there should be no ammunition in this case. So you just put the box of ammo in your luggage. We all know how baggage gets handled. So I've had one of these split open, and boy, it is not fun trying to find 50 loose rounds
Yep.
in your luggage. So I actually wrap this in packing tape to help it avoid splitting open. So that's one of the things I do. And I just reseal it before I come home. So
Gotcha.
yeah, so that's another thing I do. But I like traveling with the factory boxes.
So that fulfills the requirement
Yep.
of keeping the ammo in a case or container that was designed
For the transport.
to carry
Yeah.
cases of ammo, and
Yeah.
transportation.
You got it. That meets the requirement.
And that keeps it separate
Yep.
from the firearm, even if it's in a large case, because this the ammo is in a case of its own as well.
Right. Right. We should probably talk about a little bit more about flying with your firearm.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that's a good point. So flying with your firearm, we talked about driving, like not a big deal, right?
Mhm.
You can have it with you most places. Even if you can't carry it, you're still allowed to have it. Look up the local laws on that. But some places you can even have the gun in your car loaded without a permit. You can't conceal it on your person. Again,
That
every
really
state is
gets
different.
into the minutiae.
That's in the weeds, right? We'll give you some resources to look that type of stuff up. But flying, there's a lot of requirements, right?
So let's run through like an example of if we were going out to one of our training facilities that we can't drive to,
Yep.
if we were headed to Thunder Ranch or Gunsite or Academy or something like that, how would you prep your guns and ammunition and gear in order to get ready for that trip?
That's a great question. So first off, decide what you're taking as far as firearms and decide what kind of container you need. If it's just handguns, this container, I actually can get 2 pistols in this case. No problem. 2 full-size pistols. Yep,
Like-
exactly. So all I really need for the firearms is this, two handguns. So that's coming with me with its cable lock. So I have a secure place to put it in the car. And I've got 2 pistols. Great. Okay. I've got my ammunition in its factory boxes. There is a limit, and I believe it's 11 pounds of ammo in your checked baggage, which is actually a fair amount. So depending on what caliber, it's a fair amount of ammunition. So, I've got my ammunition in factory boxes sealed. Okay, we're good to go there. Then some other things I do for just, a pistol class, I have a little case here that I will put all the other accessories like magazines.
Mm-hmm.
So these are not floating around in my bag again.
And those are you keeping unloaded.
These should be unloaded, right? All the ammunition should be in your boxes. The magazines should be unloaded. They used to kind of allow you to have loaded magazines. They do not want that anymore.
Okay.
So unloaded magazines, any holsters or accessories go in here, spare batteries, any of my accessory stuff that goes with my firearms goes in this case. And also I have just a tiny cleaning kit with all just the basics to keep the guns functioning. And that is like my travel kit right there for handguns.
Now, does that change? Let's say we're going to, I don't know, one of those states that we are legal to carry in.
Mm-hmm.
Do we need to change that process at all if we're going to a state that recognizes our concealed carry permit versus not?
So really for this, we don't have to change anything.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, holsters. Maybe I mentioned holster, but I have my holster with me. But as far as how we have to package and do this, if you're legal to possess the gun, but maybe not carry it, nothing really changes.
Okay.
What we don't want to do is end up, and this is where that safe passage comes in again.
Right.
We don't want to fly to a state where we're not legal at all to have our handgun. I don't even really like to do transfers through states where I'm not legal, although it's almost unavoidable because there are states like Illinois and Chicago's a major hub.
The hubs, yeah.
But I'm not too nervous about Chicago. Don't hear any horror stories about people going through Chicago. New York City, and anywhere in New Jersey. And New Jersey even doesn't really like to honor safe passage at all, even driving. So I don't like to drive through New Jersey. I would not recommend driving through New Jersey with any type of gun, no matter even if you're following the safe passage law. It still could become a problem, and that's from people I know. So, but be careful where you are flying through. Look at the itinerary. Understand that if you get stuck in a place where you're not legal, do not take possession of your firearm.
Okay.
They can call the police. You can be in trouble. Probably your best bet is tell the airline, I'm not taking possession of my bag, and please call a police officer over here and let them, you might have your gun confiscated at that point, and then you might have to go through some legal ramifications to get it back, but you can't be charged with illegal possession of a firearm.
Gotcha.
So be careful with that. For long guns, this is my handgun setup, right?
Okay.
For long guns, again, some version of a bigger case. So this type of case, this actually works for like a takedown 1022, Ruger PCC, all works in this type of case, but they make full-size rifle cases. You can use them for gun only. So a rifle case, you might just put your rifle in there and lock it up and it needs to have locks that don't allow it to be pried open. That's part of the
Right.
key. Cannot be pried open. Even they can't slip a finger in there, or they're not going to allow that case. So make sure you meet that requirement. But you can keep just your long gun in, or like with this case, I might put a long gun in here, some accessories, a spare pair of shoes, my shaving kit, whatever, right?
Mhm.
I can put other things in here as well, but the entire container becomes my gun case, and I put the locks on the outside.
Gotcha.
Now, those locks should be non-TSA locks, not TSA locks, not the ones that they can use their master key to get into. Those should only be able to get into there by you, not someone else. If someone needs to get into this case, they should be contacting you, bringing you to the case or the case to use so they can inspect it if that's what they need to do.
So that was going to be a question that
Mhm.
I just was, you mentioned it. So we packed up all our gear.
Yep.
We're ready to travel,
Yep.
assuming it's a handgun class.
Yep.
So if we go to the airport, what is a hypothetical scenario or your kind of garden variety scenario to expect? What should you do?
Let's
You
walk
know.
through that process.
Hey.
Yeah. So I'm going to have my handgun
Mhm.
or guns in this type of case. I'm going to put it in whatever my luggage is, right? I try to put it in the middle of that bag so it's got padding and it's not real obvious it's there. Ammunition also gets tucked in wherever, and my accessory case gets tucked in wherever. We get to the airport. I've got my TSA lock on my luggage, on my outside of my luggage. This is a non-TSA case. I go up to the check-in counter. Don't do curbside check-in. Don't do self-check-in. Go up to the actual counter, and you have to declare, I am traveling with a firearm. And that's the verbiage I would recommend, right? Not, I have a gun.
Oh God, please don't say that.
Right. No, don't say that. I've heard people say that at the travel counter.
Oh,
But
jeez.
at the check-in counter, I'm traveling with a firearm, and I'm declaring that firearm. What they are supposed to do is give you a tag to fill out that certifies the gun is unloaded. So you need to make sure it was unloaded. You should double, triple check it. Ammunition separate, remember. And then from there, they may ask you to show it's unloaded. I'm running into this less and less, but it does happen occasionally. Be discreet, right? You may have to open the case. You may have to open the action, showing them it's unloaded. Then at that point, you close the case, you lock the case. That tag you filled out that declared the gun was unloaded goes on top of the case inside your bag. Okay, goes in there. And then that bag goes for screening. And here's where it gets interesting because every airport and even some airlines and some airports do this differently.
Okay.
Okay. The airport I fly out of, they tell you, hey, it's going to go downstairs, go through screening. I've seen it happen two ways actually here, where they'll tell you, hey, hang out at the counter here for a few minutes. When it's all clear, we'll give you the go ahead and then go through security. That way, if they need to have you open the case,
Mhm.
they can get you to do that. More recently, they've been telling us just go to your gate. And if there's a problem, we need you, we'll contact you at the gate. We'll get a hold of you there, and they'll again bring you to the bag to open the case inside the bag. If you had the full travel like rifle style case, it would be the same thing. You'd declare the firearm was in there and unloaded. You would fill out the tag. You'd open the case, put that inside. Have your non-TSA lock so they can't even get in here, and it would go for screening. Other airports might say, hey, you have to take your bag and go down the hallway, go to the other side of the terminal, wherever it might be. And it gets screened there while you're watching. I kind of like that because I get to see what's happening.
I was going to say that is the experience that I had when I was traveling for training,
Mhm.
because then you don't have to pull any kind of firearm out at the check-in counter, as awkward as that is.
As awkward as that is.
Because
Right.
even though they'll have TSA agents there and, probably some law enforcement and such, it still feels a little weird when there's 50 people behind you and all of a sudden we're unpacking firearms
Right.
and guns right at the check-in counter.
For sure.
So if you're lucky, they'll take you to a separate room or a separate place,
Yep.
where you might have to show that it's clear, it's separate, and all of those things. But just prepare yourself.
Prepare and leave yourself time because I know when I go through Florida and Orlando, The area where they do the screening for that is on the other side of the terminal.
Oh God.
So I leave an extra, like if I usually would get there 2 hours, I'll get there 3 hours out of my flight to give enough time to go all the way to the other end of the terminal, get all the way back, and then get through security. So just another tip there. So once it's been screened, it's going to go down in the hold with all the other luggage. A thing that Dave and I both have started doing is we put an air tag in the gun case, and also in our luggage. So we have 2 air tags, so we can track where this thing is as we travel. It gives us a little bit of peace of mind that that bag hasn't disappeared somewhere. So that's kind of a new thing we've been doing. I like it. Then your bag's going to arrive on the other end. And this is also where it varies by airline and airport. Sometimes it will come out on the carousel with all the other bags. I usually try to get to the carousel quickly.
First.
First, so that I'm getting it as it comes down the chute or up the ramp. And it's not sitting there spinning, waiting for me to get there and someone can grab it. But a lot of airlines now are sending firearms bags to their baggage claim office.
Okay.
So you have to actually go to their office and ask for it, present your ID, which I don't really mind because it's more secure, right? It's not just sitting there where anyone can pick it up. The last time I flew a couple months ago, it actually just came out with the oversized baggage, like the strollers and the car seats and all that stuff, at a separate door near the carousel.
Okay.
But no one told us that, of course.
Oh, geez.
So I'm not seeing my bag anywhere, and it wasn't at the office. And then finally, I just saw a door open up, and here comes all the stuff out of my bags with it. So, yeah, that was quite interesting. So, just know I would ask at the counter, like, "Hey, where's my bag going to be when I get to wherever you're going?"
So, obviously, some advanced planning required when traveling, by air.
Yep.
With your firearm. Double check state regulations, federal, TSA. When in doubt, ask. TSA website weirdly is actually very responsive. I found out they want you to do the right things, and the more questions you ask and the more things that you do correctly, the less worried they are and the less chance that your things might get lost, or you might take up extra time, or you might inadvertently be in violation of some rules or laws as a result. So do your research.
Absolutely. And it's important to look at TSA, the FAA rules, because actually they write the actual rules for the airlines on this type of stuff, and also your specific airline that you're flying. Look at their rules, because that can change. Recent change for me was a lot of the airlines now will not let you put pepper spray in your check bag anymore. They used to allow it, now they don't. So I cannot most of the time take pepper spray with me at all. So it's important to read their airline rules.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Any final things as far as flying goes? Are there different considerations other than the size between long guns and handguns?
I mean, just making sure you have a case for your long guns that cannot be pried open. This has been a big topic recently where guys who've been flying for a while all of a sudden are getting denied because they can slip a finger in by just prying that case open. So it really needs to be a very secure case. And then the latest 2 things I just was reading about for travel with bigger cases like this one, every hole that needs a lock or can accept a lock needs to have a lock in it. And you can't use cable locks like the cable locks that come when you buy a handgun or something like that. You cannot use cable locks. They want hard shackled type locks like this on the case.
Because the cables will allow them to pry open.
Exactly. Even if you have 2 hard shackle and a cable lock, they want all hard shackle locks in the whole thing. So yeah, so that's a little new nuance that has come up in the last month or so.
So maybe something worth investing in just for both storage and if you're going to be traveling, guys, like get a hard case, a Pelican case, is kind of the industry go-to and such, and you won't regret it. It's a little bit of an investment, but again, it's not something that you're going to have to purchase over and over. You buy it once and you have it.
That's definitely a buy once, yeah.
So All right, cool. Any final thoughts on flying, driving, anything like that?
I think if you do your research, it's not as big a deal as people think it is.
Okay.
Okay. But do your research. That's the big thing. Where people get hung up is they didn't look into things specifically like where they're going to end up before they went. And then they get in trouble. And as far as flying, what gets most people in trouble is forgetting something that's gun related in their carry on bag. So my carry on bag never has gun stuff in it because I don't want to be that person that just gets pulled out of line going through the checkpoint. So make sure you're searching your bag, finding everything. If you're using a bag that you might have gun stuff in, or just don't use a bag where you carry gun stuff as your checked bag. So
All right.
yeah,
What about resources? So you mentioned that people should do their research,
yeah,
when they're going to
yep,
different places and
perfect.
looking up regulations and rules. What resources are kind of out there and like reliable, the ones that we should be looking at?
Right.
Because there's a lot of stuff out
There
there,
is.
guys.
We mentioned like for flying TSA and FAA for sure you should look at those. As far as state laws and understanding what's legal, what's not legal, where your permits might be recognized, things like that. I like USCCA's website,
Mhm.
and I specifically really like usacarry.com. And I like that website because they update it very, very rapidly when there's changes. So if a law changes or reciprocity changes between states, they usually update it pretty quickly so you'll know if you're legal or not. And they even have resources where you can put in a map like I have this permit or these permits, and it will show you what states you're legal to have your firearm and legal to carry your firearm in both. So,
That's cool.
yep, I like those resources quite a bit.
All right.
Yeah.
We did have a couple of frequently asked questions
Okay.
regarding traveling with a firearm. One of the ones that actually wasn't listed here, but I thought of was we mentioned those long cases, long hard cases for long guns
Yeah.
and shotguns.
Yep.
So, like the kind of spongy, soft cases with the zipper and stuff. Yay and nay.
Not approved for air travel.
Okay.
Not approved for air travel. You'd probably be okay for safe journey. Traveling through a state, it's still cased, but they're hard to lock. So, again, it's an extra layer where you can say, hey, I didn't have access to it if you have it locked. But it would probably be okay for vehicle, but definitely not for air travel.
So hard cases
Or
gotcha.
yeah.
Um, if I have a concealed carry permit in my home state,
Mm-hmm.
but not the state I am traveling to, can I still carry like concealed while I'm traveling?
Maybe. So you got to do your research. This is a USA Carry or USCCA question because there are some states that will recognize your state permit. New York State, there's approximately 13 states that just recognize New York's permit. You can carry there no problem. The other thing now is there's constitutional carry in many states. So it's concealed carry with no permit needed at all. As long as you're legal to possess the gun, you're legal to carry the gun, but you got to know that state's rules on constitutional carry. That might be a whole episode talking about stuff like that. But again, do your research. So the answer is maybe, but if that state truly does not recognize other CCW permits, then no. And there's also a good chance then you're not legal to have the gun there.
Right. Yep.
So be careful with that.
So check where you're going, check where you're leaving from, and check to make sure you're legal to carry or legal to possess and know the difference.
Right. Exactly.
What if I am staying in a hotel or motel or Holiday Inn that I am legally allowed to carry
So you have a permit that you're legally allowed to carry in that state?
in that state, or maybe that state recognizes
Your
your
permit?
states?
Okay. Yeah. So if you're staying in a place, it becomes your domicile for the night and you can carry into there. There's usually no issue. Again, there may be quirks in certain states about rules about certain places. So it's worth doing a little bit of research, but the general answer is, if it's a place you're legally allowed to stay overnight and you have a permit for that state or a recognized permit by that state, it should not be an issue for you to carry there at all.
Gotcha.
Yep.
What else do we often get in our classes about traveling and firearms?
So, I'll have questions. Is there a limit of like how much ammo I can take?
Oh,
Again, we
right.
said the 11 pounds on the flying, but in your vehicle, there is no legal limit. If you get stopped and questioned, and you have 20,000 rounds of ammo, um,
That
that
sounds like a good training
that
weekend.
that sounds like a good train. Right. It sounds like a good training weekend to us. It is, but it may raise some eyebrows, right? And you may have to explain, well, yeah, I'm going to this competition or I'm going to take these classes. Um, you know, so be aware of that, but there's no legal real limit. So people have also asked about number of guns. Can I travel with more than one gun? Absolutely. You can travel with, there's no real legal limit either. Um, my wife and I often have a pistol for each of us, and I'll have a long gun, locked in the drawers in the back. So, yeah, there's no limit.
So that brings up an interesting question. Somebody asked if we're traveling to another state or through another state and we get pulled over for a traffic stop, do we have a legal obligation to declare or let the law enforcement officer know that we are traveling with firearms?
The answer is probably,
Okay.
or at least maybe, but it depends on the specific state you're in.
Yep.
So that's duty to inform laws, and some states have duty to inform. Many states have duty to inform. So basically, if you're interacting with a police officer and you have firearms with you, you have to notify them at the first opportunity that you have a firearm in your possession. And it doesn't matter if it's on you or locked in the trunk, you have to let them know. A lot of states don't have that legal requirement, but many do. And I don't even know all of them. I would look that up if I was traveling, and I wasn't sure if I hadn't gone there before. So, and things change to it. I think that's another good point is, places that you've been to, don't assume that the rules are the same this year because you were there 2 years ago. They may have changed. They may have changed for the better. South Carolina went from
Right.
almost nobody can carry here other than residents to constitutional carry where you're legal to carry if you're legal to have the gun. So, but check and see if there's been changes, even places you've gone before.
I know a lot of our students and instructors, whenever we make our annual pilgrimage to SIG Academy, what they're doing is they're looking at all the states that they're traveling through, in order
Yeah.
to get up there. So
Correct.
we leave from New York, we're going through Vermont,
Through Vermont.
looking at New Hampshire,
Yep.
we're avoiding Massachusetts like the
We're
plague,
avoiding Massachusetts. Right.
and
That's
such.
right.
But, I'm sure all of them are looking at concealed carry, permit laws,
Yep.
whether they recognize New York,
Yep.
duty to inform laws, just in case something should happen,
Yep.
and just making sure you cover kind of all your bases. And guys, these resources are available on your phone, as
Mhm.
well as, I think they have an app for it.
It's a concealed carry app. I just saw that has been recommended by some instructors that I know. So,
Right.
yep.
But, if you're old school, like, some of us, it's worth having maybe like a packet or a sheaf of papers that you just kind of keep in your car,
Yep.
For frequent states that you might be traveling to for training or camping or, what have you, just to know. And you obviously made an attempt, in order to find out the laws of that state.
That just reminded us that speaking of having information readily available, when you go to the counter for check-in at an airline with a firearm, I have the FAA rules already pulled up on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
So I can show them to the counter agent if there's an argument over something that I've done. So I try to follow the rule, make sure everything's in compliance. And then if they're giving me a little bit of a hard time, which I've run into, although not as much recently, I can actually or have them read the FAA.
Respectfully.
Like, hey, no, yeah. And it's just, hey, here's the FAA rules. This is what it says. And this is how I'm interpreting that. And this is why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Absolutely.
A lot of times that will diffuse a situation. And if it doesn't ask for a supervisor, that's my go-to. So
Cool.
yeah. Don't be scared to travel with your firearm, right? I think it is something that's a little bit daunting, like we started saying at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But with a little bit of research and a good amount of planning, it can be done. And the cool thing is once you've got the resources, you've bought the case and all that, it's stuff you're going to have. So you don't have to go and do it again.
Right.
And, you'll get more comfortable over time. I remember the first time I flew with a handgun, I was like super, super nervous. And it's really not that scary. after you've done it a few times. So
And it's a great opportunity. There are tons of training facilities and locations all around the country. So don't limit yourself to, everything that's within driving distance.
yeah,
There are places, acclaimed, accredited, places that are all over the place with wonderful instructors, that you're going to be able to get a different experience from as a result. So
yeah,
in that way, it really does open up a world of training, learning, and being able to go to other states and see some sights and have some fun as well, right?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, don't not train because you have to fly there and travel with your guns.
Mhm.
It will open up some great opportunities for you.
So again, legal disclaimer, we are not legal experts or attorneys, but these are some considerations, a lot of questions that people have brought up. And having traveled with firearms to training and competition and teaching other students as well, we picked up a lot of pointers along the way. So
Yeah,
we hope this video was helpful. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, check out our Patreon. If you have more questions that we did not go over, be sure to leave a comment below, and we'll see if we can get them going for part 2.
yeah.
Anything else, Matt?
No, but leave those comments and questions because I'll be looking at them and I'll respond and get back to you guys with the best information I can, or point you in the right direction. We really appreciate the interaction. Hey guys, if you like these videos, why don't you check out one of these or these or these?